Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics, a Catholic women's talk show podcast. I'm Stacy, one of your hosts, and with me I have...
Hi, I'm Alicia.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Lauren.
Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics. This week we're talking about the various names of God and how God has shown up in our lives.
Well, we're in a new year, and every year there's always a push, certainly at the beginning and even all throughout, to just sort of figure out who you are and where you're going in your spiritual life. And it's a whole lot of who am I and where am I headed? And we thought it'd be cool to just pull back a little bit and say, but who is God in my life and who has he been in my life? And use that as the beginning of the dialogue of where our lives are headed this year. And we thought we would open it up with a discussion of the names of God in the Bible. Whenever God would interact with the nation of Israel, the Bible always reports that he shows up, or they refer to him by some attribute of his character, and it's one of his names. And there's, I think, about 99 different names that are mentioned in the Bible, and there's all different kinds of lists you can find that show those names and give the references where he's referred to as that name by someone or refers to himself by that name. And so we thought we would look at a list and each of us would pick the one that resonates the most for the way that God has sort of shown up in our lives this past year.
So I actually feel like he's shown up in several different of these names with me this past year, but probably Parakletos, which means the helper, is probably the best definition, because it kind of encompasses everything, because he's helping me through his teaching. He's helping me through all sorts of things. And so, I don't know. It's just been a weird year. It's just been a lot of hard things this year. And but at the same time, a lot of peace. I don't know. So that's the other thing, is I don't feel like just one name fits for my year, because it's been a lot of weird things. So like you have the Shalom, or Jehovah Shalom, and then also the Ori, the light. So there's the peace and the light. And so there's been that too. So like even within all this chaos and him coming in and helping. And really, I kind of was looking for one that was meant lover, because really that's been the other thing this year that I really feel like, all the way from the women's conference that was back in March, that we're about to have another one. But so like this was almost truly a year ago when one of the speakers talked about, Jesus being the ultimate bridegroom. Like this whole year from that point on, it was just like this whole like drawing me in type of a thing. So that's really how if there is a name of God that meant groom or bridegroom, that would probably actually be the best way to define him with me this year. Just this whole drawing in and turning me towards, even with all the chaos and the craziness of this year, but constantly turning me to see the beauty in the things that are going on within the chaos and everything. I think that's probably the way he's shown up a lot this year for me.
So as the Parakletos, as your light, as your lover, and we said we didn't find one for that one, but Jehovah Nissi might be, the Lord is my banner, for that one, because in Song of Solomon, remember, she says, he draws me to his banqueting table, and his banner over me is love. And it's like this covering that defines who you are and where you stand in life, under his banner, under his, mantle almost. You'd have to look up the significance of that. Maybe that one would fit for what you're saying. There's these wonderful lists that you can find. There's Jehovah Shalom, Jehovah Rapha, my healer, my peace. And that's kind of where we're working off from.
Yeah, and I'll be putting that in some link to this or something in the show notes. One of these various Old Testament names for God, which I've never really meditated on or really thought about as much until Lauren kind of brought this up. And so, I knew that there was these different names for God. I hadn't really thought about really where has, like, in what way has he been present to me? I hadn't really thought about that before, and I think that's something that's really important that I should have been doing, and like seeing, like meditating, like what is, and like you're saying, Stacy, like God is there for us in like very different, like all different ways. It's not just one way, for sure. The name that really resonated with me for this past year would probably be, I'm guessing I'm saying this right, Jehovah Jireh. Mm-hmm. The Lord will provide. And that is it's hard for me though, because I am, that's like, I've really had to, let God like show me that he's going to provide for me and not just, I'm not in charge of it. My husband's been, for this past year working on a new business, and we're just kind of jumping in on this, on a new business of his. And so it's been a lot of growth in seeing that God providing for us and being there to like that reliance on him, as opposed like that it'll be okay. Like even if things are rough for a while, or like it'll be okay because he will provide. And so my prayer, I've had to refocus a lot of litany of trust and we talk about, we all here are big fans of the surrender prayer, and just asking God, not asking God for his provision, but just saying, God, I know you're going to provide for me. Mic drop, So I think that was the one that really resonated with me when just going through these different names.
I had trouble kind of parsing mine, which one was the best to describe the way that he's shown up for us this year. And for me personally, I was kind of going with the one you were going with, Jehovah Jireh, but then I realized that God's character in my life this year has been more of El Shaddai, which means the all-sufficient one, which I thought was interesting because in my life this year, I feel like I've been pulled and stretched and put in different places and in directions, A, that I wasn't expecting, and B, that are very, very new for me. Situations where I, believe it or not, found myself not knowing what to say or how to be in a crowd or in a group or in a classroom. And I found myself in a lot of ways insufficient this year to the task, unable to do X, Y, or Z effectively, or unable to know what I was supposed to do. And I had to turn to him and say to him a lot, you're going to have to help me. Like, you're going to have to just tell me exactly what I have to do. You're going to have to be enough. Because I feel too stretched to be enough for all of these things that you're calling me to do. Are you sure this is what you want me to do, Lord? Like, to ask him that all the time, I'm like, are you sure? Because this seems a little counterproductive or counterintuitive to what the other thing you told me to do. And then I watch as the sufficiency of God comes in where my sufficiency ends and makes all of that work out cleanly and easily, tying the knots, and bows on things behind my back when I don't even see it, just going behind and before and hemming me in. And I think, there was a point this year where I said to him, I remember thinking, there isn't any way that this isn't going to cause a problem for X, Y, and Z in my life. Like this thing that you've asked me to do or this thing that we're involved in, there's going to be gaps here. And I very clearly remember him saying to me at several different points and in different ways, if you will just ask me to help you or to do this for you, I will do it. And it seemed very important in my spiritual life this year that I would specifically ask him for the exact help that I needed. And then he would just like swoop in and do it way better than I thought. Almost like he's showing off a little bit. So, and he's done that my whole life. It's not that this is new. It's just that in this year in particular, I had to trade my insufficiency in different ways. I felt like an imposter in a lot of the things that God had gotten me involved in this year. I felt small and not powerful and not capable. And it's almost like he said, that's right. You're not. But you're anointed for it. And I will make your way clear if I've called you to it. And I know that I'm speaking in generic terms because I'm not going to get into details of my life on, this forum. Like, I do. I often do. But, I'm going to be more generic with the specific stuff. But, so I feel like in a unique way, God has showed up as El Shaddai in my life, the all-sufficient one. And then also, like Stacy, what you said, Parakletos, for sure, the helper. No way I could have gotten to this year without him. There's no way if he hadn't been helping me the whole time. And this next year, and this kind of, I'll sort of introduce this aspect of the conversation now, steering it into where we feel the gaps now and are asking the Lord to come in. What part of your character do we need more of in our lives, Lord? And I think this year, I want to keep following the scent of healing. It keeps coming up in my life. This theme of let me heal you and follow the healing, go where the freedom is. And one phrase this year that I want to keep running after in the next year is the phrase, what are the parts of my life that I am unfree? In my heart, in my soul, in my interactions with other people, where am I reacting or responding from a place where it doesn't feel free or at peace? And how can I start to bringing that stuff to light, asking the Lord to give me wisdom and guidance in that, and even just developing some new patterns. How do I get free? I keep thinking I just want to get free. Like there's all these things and some are holding, little things that holding me back from just truly responding with that open-handed, just okay, whatever kind of feeling that you want to give to God. So I think I would like to pursue his work in my life as healer this year, the Jehovah Rapha, which is where the name Raphael comes from. The angel Raphael.
I think the name that I would like to pursue, I guess, or see more or focus on this side of my life, would be that El Shaddai, the all-sufficient one, that that recognizing that all these things that we seek are nothing, that God is all we need, or all I need. And that really, when you were speaking of that, Lauren, it really hit me, especially with that, saying God provide. Like, and I was like, man, I wanted him to keep providing.
Yeah. But he's been doing a great job of that.
Yeah. But I think to recognize that that provision is not always what I expect it to be, and that what he is sufficient. That he's all we need. He's all specifically, he's all I need. Is where I need to grow in recognizing of him. Before you mentioned that, like the one that had the other one that had I gravitated towards was Jehovah Rohi or Rohi, the Lord is my shepherd. We focusing or trying to be more like in tune with God as the Father is something I've recognized needs to be. I need to kind of develop that in my life right now. So, of the different names of the Old Testament names, that like there are translations that what I'm looking at, like that would be the one I think that would kind of be along those lines. I just finished reading The Father's Tale by Michael O'Brien, and it's a prodigal son story, and in it, like, not to get too much away, but like in it, like the father, something happens to one of his sons, and it's not the son's story of going off and all the things that happen, but the father then pursues him, and it's his tale of all the things that happened while he's searching for his son, and his growth in his relationship with God as a father himself, and it was so good, so good. I finished it like this morning, like wee hours of this morning, so it's very fresh in my mind. It's like a really long book, but I was up late. And yeah, so, but that really kind of opened some things up to me, like this thing, focusing that up, like that's an important aspect of my relationship with God that I need to develop more of. And so that the Jehovah, the Lord is my shepherd, and following the shepherd, the way like following, the sheep follow the shepherd. That's how we follow the Father. Like the Father is, God the Father is not the same as like our earthly father, or like it's like he's perfect, and we follow him. Like the love between the sheep and the shepherd is kind of that same kind of idea, whereas opposed to like where we are with our earthly relationships and parental, like how I am to my kids is like, but I want to shepherd them.
No, but when you talk about shepherding, I think of the shepherd really knows the sheep very well.
Right.
He doesn't always tell the sheep what he's doing. Like, and now we're going to this valley where we will eat this patch of green, not that one, but this one. But he just sort of takes them where they need to go based on what he knows they need.
Right, and allowing God to do that in my life, like without saying no. I want to eat the dead grass over here. I think that is my focus.
The one that kind of really stood out to me, even when I was first going through the list, but at first I thought maybe it was the one I was going to talk about first, but it obviously wasn't. The wild goose likes to move things wherever it wants to. But Mekadishichem, which is the Lord who sanctifies, Jehovah Mekadishichem. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's pretty close. But yes, Mekadishichem. Yes, yeah, that one. But I think this year has already, we have already gotten some news that, is kind of preparing our family for some loss this year. And then with already that possibility there, I've already lost 2 people that were already this year. Like we're only on day 9. I've already lost 2 people in my life this year. And so it's kind of like, I feel like there's a lot of detachment that's going to be happening this year, if that makes any sense. Like learning to trust in God's plan, and things happen when they're supposed to happen, and how all that goes. Just trying to, and learning how to, that whole trust and finding peace. And like I said kind of before, like last year was a whole lot of turning so I can see the beauty in chaos. I feel like he taught me how to do that, and this is going to be the year that I get to use what I learned, if that makes any sense. So to look, always turn back towards him. So
I think that's beautiful to like recognize that all the things that happen in our lives are there to sanctify us. So to recognize that, like, this is possibly how God is showing up for me right now, and this is how it's going to be this year. Like this is not the end. This is where I am now. Is not who I'm going to be at the end of this. Like, God is using this for his good. Like, we're going to go through fire, and he's going to refine us with that fire. And it's going to hurt, but at the end, it's going to be gold. Like, you're going to be shiny. And we don't know, like, when that end comes, or if they will even have that end, like that shiny gold, the refining, whatever the refining fires have brought us through. We may not even see that on this earth, but like to recognize like that's what these trials are for is really, really important. And it's so hard to do.
Yeah, because then you see all of these, we don't have to go it alone because you see all these other names. The Lord is here. Very specific mentions of God's accompaniment through all of this with us as he's sanctifying and providing. I am here. There's the Lord who sees. All of these things that indicate
that one really. That one, the God who sees me.
And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that this one kind of came about, and this is a really interesting one. I think it was when Abraham's other son, Ishmael, his mother had run away or was pushed out by Sarah, his wife, and she was in the desert by herself, and God came to her, and it was the God who sees me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that story. I don't know. I have this.
Yes. So I just looked up the verse that was referenced in the list that we're going to be linking. And that's exactly where it was. And she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called. I'm not going to pronounce that.
Very good. That's beautiful. And then I think about too with that, God, the God who sees me. Like, I feel like as humans, like when we think about words like provision, provide, sufficiency, in us, there's a lot of like movement and action there, like working it out, right? Like I got to provide for my family. I got to make this, do this, go here, sell this, develop this, attend this. These are all these things that we have to do to provide for someone. But with God, it just happens. Because of his sufficiency, what he wills happens. And I think of the ease with which the Lord gives us what we need when we ask. It doesn't cost him the way it costs us, and there's something about that I love, like the effortlessness of asking God for help.
Well, you say that, and it reminded me, one of the names I really liked in here was Logos, which was the word. And I think of, it's in John, where he talks about in the beginning, the word was with God, and God, the word was God. And that whole, like, the effortlessness that God just, with his words, creates everything. And so you're talking about that, and that made me think about that name and how I love that one.
I mean, how many nights have we sat up, all three of us, stressing about, money. Everybody stresses about money, right? How many nights have you sat up crunching numbers, right? And figuring out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for that? How am I going to fit this bill in? And there's so much just stress in that, and mental anguish, and working through. And it's a good thing. It's part of providing for your family. It's not, you have to do it. But with the Lord, when he sees this thing that we're looking at, it's no stress to help us. It doesn't cost, when you have to ask somebody for money, or you got to borrow money or something, you're like, oh man, it's so like embarrassing. There's all this like emotional turmoil. Or am I the only one? I don't know. But, there's all this ick from human to human, right? When we have to ask for help, or ask for this provision, or, or market something, or sell ourselves, which is just awful. I hate that part of life. Oh, it's the worst. When you're in business for yourself, having to market yourself, I hate it so much. But I can just present God with this situation and say, you see, and it costs you nothing to help me. because you are all sufficient, and it comes from your heart naturally. I feel like if I would just approach my problems that way, I would be a lot more peaceful inside. Like, okay, Lord, how are we going to do this? Could I borrow from your heart there? Just, that peace and that trust.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. Like they say, like, borrow from your heart. Like, I'm asking God all the time, like, just borrow a little bit of your patience. And that's where he provides. Yeah, that the guy who sees me, though, like, it really strikes me. It's like, dude, because it's hard, like, to think about, like, he sees, like, am I letting him see me? Mm-hmm. Like, I know if he does, but what places am I holding back in my heart? What places am I, like, even though he's like, I know he's there, he sees all that, but like, you're still, like, resisting, and like, what am I afraid for him to see?
That's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah.
That I won't be sharing. I'll tell everybody what I'm afraid of God to see.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, but like, as us as humans, a lot of the things we long for is for people to see us. Does that make sense? And actually, one of the losses that I talked about was a former teacher of mine who passed away just a couple of days ago. And one of the things I wrote, all former classmates and other former teachers, we're trying to figure out what's going on and who's going to do what. One of the things I said is that I may not remember all the things she taught me, but I remember that she made me feel seen. And that's what God does for us, is as long as we open ourselves up to him, like Annie says, because sometimes we try to hide from God, but whether we try to hide or not, he does see us. And if we're open to letting him, he'll let us know how much he sees us. Just like Hagar in the desert. The God, the one who sees me.
And she was hiding, from Sarah.
Yep.
Of all people. She said, get out. And he saw her and provided for her out in the wasteland. What is that? St. Teresa of Avila? I know we've talked about this quote before, but it's one of my favorites. When you're meditating, she's, when you're spending time with God and you're in adoration, she's like, looking at the crucifix, she said, look at him and let him look at you. And there is a let there, there is an ascent that takes place in that moment where you let the Lord see you. That's way harder than looking at him, I think. Mm-hmm. So, listeners, who is God in your life? Which of these names has resonated for you this past year? And which of the names of God do you want as the banner over your life this year? You want to pursue him in that way more, ask him to show you himself in that way more in this year of our Lord 2025.
And as always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Join us again in about 2 weeks.
Until then, may God bless you and may Mary accompany you.
Coffee and Catholics is a proud partner of the Smart Catholics Podcast Network. Find new shows to love, meet like-minded Catholics, and join the community at smartcatholics.com.